So I never grew up dreaming about being on YouTube. YouTube wasn't a thing back then. What I dreamed about as a kid literally almost killed me. I grew up less than 2 miles away from where Hakeem and the Rockets won 2 titles.
The NBA Finals moved deep into the heart of Texas.
And I remember this is my first sports memories. The TV on, I'm a little kid. I just remember the adults screaming, right? We went to the parade.
And the city of Houston has won its first major championship.
And so I fell in love with the NBA really early on. But I lost my love for sports somewhere when high school started and then bad habits took over. I was that person that your parents probably hated. I got in trouble a lot. I skipped school in high school. I, for some reason, got into drinking and drugs. I don't know why. I guess it was to escape reality. I do know, though, that it scared my parents. And by the way, I come from an amazing home, a great mom and dad, but for some random reason, I had no interest in my own future. Don't know why. I somehow made it out of high school alive and into a college who asked me not to come back after 1 semester. But during that winter break, after I first went to college, I came home and the whole story almost ends. Around Christmas in 2005, I was at a party and I almost died of a drug overdose. And I went ahead and looked up the statistics, and apparently almost 760,000 people have died from opioids in the US since 1999. Point is, I was really close to being one of them, really close. So my parents were freaked out, sent me to a treatment center in California. I had never been to California. I was 19 years old, stubborn. This was just the most trouble I had ever been in. And by the way, I broke every rule there. Snuck in cigarettes, started dating some girl. Basically, I was still not ready to change my life at all. And when no one was looking, I would still act out. But then something happened. I can't explain it, but basically, to put it into a few words, I picked up a conscience, right? And I think that there are 2 kinds of people who sleep well at night. People with a clean conscience and people with no conscience. And for years, I had no conscience. If I didn't get in trouble for something, if I never got caught, it's I didn't care. But then, around 19 years old, I found myself acting out when no one was looking, but I felt bad for it. I felt miserable. So, my old life officially ended on October 3rd, 2006. I broke down, couldn't keep living like that, feeling bad about, being a scumbag, really. I told my parents I needed to come clean about how I'd been living. And instead of being upset that I messed up again, they were actually relieved, which I didn't expect. I think really they could just tell that I was being honest for the first time in years, and they'd do anything to help. So I plugged in with my support system back in California, and I stopped fighting. And honestly, I have no idea what my motivation to change was at 20 years old. I don't know where it came from, but I've seen it happen to people. Things seem really hopeless, they're not gonna change, but you never know when it can happen. And then the good part. I was 20 years old, and for the first time, I was free to just be a normal kid. I got a lot of great friends. I went to college. I played sports. I worked at a soccer podcast. Then after graduation, I got an internship working for Major League Soccer in New York City. So I asked myself, all right, if I could do anything with the rest of my life, what would it be? And that answer was to get paid talking sports, which I know sounds crazy. But I just randomly emailed the guy who does Laker games on the radio, John Ireland.
But you guys pulled it out and was a big win.
They try to take over the game.
Shaq, we're on live. I know.
And I told John, hey man, I love what you do on the radio. I want to talk sports for a living. What do I need to do? And he sent me, a kid he didn't even know during the NBA season when he's busy, a 3-page long email. And he said, I want you to start at a small local TV station, apply to 100 jobs if you need to before you get that one yes. And that advice was so perfect because I literally applied to 90 different jobs before I got a yes. And my one yes was as a part-time sports reporter in Abilene, Texas, right? I didn't make very much money at all, but I couldn't wait to get there. And to make things even better, my California girlfriend graduated from USC and agreed to join me. So we got an apartment and we got married. That began a trip of 1 year in Abilene, 2 years in Bakersfield, California on TV there covering sports, then 2 amazing years in San Antonio, Texas covering the Spurs, and the Dallas Cowboys actually. Did you know, whenever Cowboys games are on, the city that watches most is Dallas, city number 2 is San Antonio. I had no idea. By the way, the Cowboys were the best. They treated the media like we were friends. Like they would give us big giant meals, they would invite us in to interview the quarterback. The Spurs were the worst, but that's another story. Now I knew Greg Popovich's reputation with the media, but I thought for some reason I was a very headstrong young guy, you know. I'm not gonna let this old man get to me. I don't care what he thinks. I'm gonna get in there and ask my questions. And it usually ended up like this.
What are your thoughts on the way your team finished the game?
They're good thoughts.
Yes, he ripped me in front of everyone all the time. And I swear to God, I would try it, get my ego hurt. Try it, get my ego. And I did it over and over until I was like, I was just beaten down. I was like, never mind, I'm not even gonna ask anymore. I lost to Greg Popovich, I can admit that. But I was lucky enough to cover the last years of Tony Romo and Tim Duncan, plus prime Spurs Kawhi Leonard. He had just won Finals MVP when I got there. He was an amazing guy to watch in person. But Kawhi also didn't give great sound bites.
Good, long, but very good, productive summer.
Of course, Zaza Pachulia ended Kawhi's season in 2017, and it was also my end in San Antonio. CBS Sports flew me into an audition at their new network called CBS Sports HQ. And honestly, I did not think that I would get that job at all because I was still really new in that industry, and there were some high-level people working there. And I think that mindset helped me actually just relax during that audition or something, because somehow I got the call to work there. It was my dream job. I literally was working with guys I used to watch on ESPN. Pro athletes were my coworkers, and I was scared as hell. I seriously was. I didn't feel comfortable the first year at CBS. I mean, I would make a mistake on air, and I would drive home with my mind racing. What are they going to do? What if they let me go? Who am I to even have this job with my background? You know, like, they don't even know who they hired, right? And I would keep running those crappy thoughts through my head, which was, you know, a killer. But I will say the reason I got through that first year was amazing coworkers. Like, they may have been on ESPN or whatever, but they didn't judge me. It was awesome. Like, I would make a mistake and they wouldn't ever make me feel like a failure. In fact, they rooted me on, which made me feel so good. So by the beginning of year 2, I felt at home. However, by that time, the decision was already made that they weren't going to bring me back, right? And so at the end of my contract, my boss let me go with a hug and advice to start a podcast or something while you look for another job. Now, clearly, I was devastated. I mean, seriously, like, I had run this over in my head, afraid of it, and then it happens, right? It was like literally a nightmare coming true. I felt embarrassed. I felt like a failure, but I didn't feel like going back to local TV. So on my boss's advice, I started a podcast that I called AM Hoops. And the idea was, the one thing that I learned, like, I would have the morning shift at CBS. I would drive there in the morning and listen to recaps of everything that happened the night before with baseball, but I didn't have anything for basketball like that. So I figured that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to recap every single game at night so that people have their AM hoops to listen to in the morning. So I did that, and I started a YouTube channel. Casey Kiernan here from AM Hoops News. The response to YouTube was so good that I stopped doing that podcast and I stopped looking for another job. Over the past 2 years, AM Hoops has grown to, over 130,000 subscribers, and I'm able to make a living doing exactly what I love to do, and I feel so comfortable here talking to you guys. Like, this literally feels like the perfect fit. So I was thinking about, my whole story and everything, and when I just kind of look at all of it, I think the most important days of my life were when my parents took me to that treatment center and the day that I got let go at CBS. And the crazy thing is, at the time, both of those seemed like the worst days of my life, but they turned out to be the best. And so if I've learned anything, and I'm not saying I do this perfectly at all whatsoever, but it's to not judge every situation in that moment as good or bad, and just to enjoy the ride. And I also learned that what I want to be is like all those people who helped me along the way. If a kid emails me for career advice, I hit them back like John Ireland did. If I see someone trying on YouTube, I give them a subscribe and support them like those people at CBS. But most importantly, I try to be a great part of my family today because of how they love me. that is my story. It was a little awkward for me to tell. Like I said, I've never ever put that stuff out there. But really the reason I did it was for two reasons. Number one was so that we can get to know each other better, because I'm going to be in this game for the long haul. But also just to give maybe some hope to someone out there struggling with the same stuff I did. You know, hit me up down below in the comments. You can email me, whatever. But most importantly, I am grateful for every single one of you.